Now I want to go ahead and make a simple guitar loop for the hook of my track. I went ahead and loaded in a guitar recording that I created just to save a little bit of time, and because there's some weird latency on my Pro Tools setup with my screen capture and recording audio in real time. But all I did here was basically take my guitar, plug it directly into my audio interface, which is a Focusrite Scarlett 18920 Gen 3. And I just played this super simple single note pattern. If we take a look at this, all this is doing is playing basically just a rhythmic kind of pattern, similar to what the swing is doing on the bass, just going from C to A sharp, G to G sharp. It sounds like this. And the way that I figured out these notes was just jamming along to the chords that I created, but basically it's following the same general contour. It starts off with a C note, which is included in kind of that main chord here. So you can see this is actually the top note of this chord. Then it goes to an A sharp, which in this case we don't have an A sharp, but we have one a little bit later. And then it basically goes down to a G, which is, you can see right here, it's in this middle of the chord. Then it goes down to a G sharp. So again, that's right here. It's kind of following the general structure of those chords and just playing around with the different notes that we have inside of that scale. And that's how I kind of created this whole pattern. So by itself, it's not very exciting, but once we start applying effects, it's going to become a lot more interesting. This guitar melody is going to be inspired by some of the indie rock bands such as the XX or Tycho as well. There's some really cool ambient guitar effect sounds that are on their records, and we'll use that to kind of fill out our main chorus section. So the simplicity of this pattern is what allows it to be more of an ambient texture rather than a lead line, because we'll actually chop out the vocal a little bit later, and we'll add that into this main chorus section, and that'll kind of act as the lead. This is more of like this background element. And the thing that makes it more interesting is it's not just following the notes that the bass is playing, it's kind of moving around in a general contour that's sort of similar to what the bass is doing, but it's still within the key and it's playing different notes. That just adds to the harmonic complexity of my track. The first thing we want to do with our guitar is going to go ahead and quantize that audio. I'm going to go ahead and make a selection. Oh, and by the way, you can download this loop in the course materials as well if you'd like to put this in your Pro Tools session and follow along. I'm going to go ahead and select that. Let's go ahead and go over to our warp settings. I'll zoom in so we can see those warp markers. And then with that selected, I want to go ahead and go up to Event, Event Operations, and Quantize. Make sure that Elastic Audio Events is selected. It's on quantize mode. It's on the 16th notes. Hit Apply. And you can see that now it's went ahead and installed those warp markers. It's going to make sure that everything is in time on my sound. Let's go ahead and put the metronome on here with that soloed. Make sure it's all working. And on some of those notes, you can hear just a little bit of artifacting happening. But in the case of this example, because it'll have so much reverb on it, I'm not going to worry about that. But if you wanted to go in and adjust that, you could play around with your different elastic audio settings here. So for example, right now this is set to polyphonic. You could swap around with these different modes or the window control to adjust that. But in our case, it'll be totally fine because it's going to have a lot of effects on it. So the first thing we need to do is go ahead and emulate a guitar amp. Since this was just a DI guitar, there's no processing on it. Let's go ahead and emulate that. So let's go to multi-channel audio plugins. Go down to Avid, and then we are looking for the Sans amp, which is like a guitar amp emulation. So we can click on that, and it's going to give us this sound. So by itself, it's pretty simple. Let's go ahead and increase the amp. So we're sort of changing the bias from more of like a preamp to an actual amplifier for guitar. Maybe not quite that crunchy. Take the buzz down. Got that mid-range boost. Go ahead and take the crunch all the way down, the drive, and then we can play around with these settings here. So that way it gives us a nice clean electric guitar tone. Then from there, let's go ahead and add in a chorus effect. A lot of electric guitars sound really nice as they have a nice washy chorus on them. Let's go ahead and load that up. Let's go down to Avid. I want to load in Mod Delay 3. So this is actually just a delay effect, but there's some chorus presets on here because there is some more advanced functionality. So that'll give us kind of a chorus effect, even though Pro Tools Intro doesn't necessarily have one built in. So all we have to do is go to Presets. We can scroll up, and then all I am looking for is going to be this chorus. So you can hear that kind of modulation happening, the sort of pitch movement up and down. And then all I really have to do is go ahead and adjust the dry wet to taste. So right now it's 100%. I'm going to blend in the original signal. And that's giving us a nice chorus effect that makes that guitar just feel a little bit more interesting. And then let's go ahead and add in a nice washy reverb. So this is really where the flavor of this guitar is going to come from, and the kind of thing that's actually going to make it sound really nice. Because right now it's just a very simple electric guitar tone, pretty generic, but with a really large reverb on it, it's going to become a lot more interesting. So I want this to be a very large acoustic space because this is more of an ambient element. So let's do church. That way it gives us a really large, like cathedral type sound. And let's go ahead and leave that at 8.7 seconds. So super long reverb time. And we can go ahead and leave all these other settings where they are by default. We'll just adjust this mix control. So that way we can decide how much reverb we want on our signal. So right there, that's a ton more interesting. Let's crank that input gain. So we just drive this a little bit harder. This isn't like a distortion or anything, but that way we just get a higher output volume because it's very quiet right now. And then we'll go ahead and add in just a touch of equalization. So let's go down to Avid, and let's go ahead and load up the EQ. Let's trap out some of that bass because we don't need those frequencies in there. So let's go ahead and put that up to like 18 decibels per octave. Basically, I'm going to adjust this until I hear it kind of having an audible effect. Maybe do kind of like a mid-range, upper mid-range boost with like a wider Q. Trying to grab kind of that clickiness on the guitar. This provides a little bit more body, which is quite nice. Now there's kind of some like floppy mid-range frequencies here. I don't want those because they'll just get in the way. Cleans it up a little bit. And then let's go ahead and check these frequencies over here. I'm going to boost those just a little bit, and that is at, let's see, where did I have that set? 280 with like 1.7 decibels. It's just a little boost there just to provide a little bit more body. Maybe even just a little bit less. We're not trying to go too overboard with that. And then I'll kind of just tighten up that guitar sound. And then we can go ahead and listen to that in context with my record. All right, so that is all for this guitar. Hope you enjoyed the video. I'll see you in the next one.